But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." In just a few weeks, the Szczerba family will be taking our annual trip down to North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We pack up our little RAV4 to the brim with just about everything we could possibly need for our vacation. That includes our 2 dogs, enough clothes and toys for our son, which feels endless, and of course, snacks and drinks for the long car ride. We attach a cargo carrier to the back of the car to hold our suitcases because there just isn't enough room. Everything is packed carefully and thoughtfully. We don't want to forget anything or waste any space. It turns into a real-life game of Jenga to fit everything and everyone in without something falling out. Last year, our trip was delayed because of a big thunderstorm that came through our area. I remember the night before we were supposed to leave, Marissa and I were anxiously checking our weather apps on our phones. We decided that despite the threat of rain, we would still pack up the car, get everything ready, and leave around 5 o'clock in the morning. So we did just that. We got up early, got dressed, and we were ready to walk out the door. But when we checked the weather app one final time, we saw one of those giant blobs of rain coming our way. We made the decision to wait until the next morning to leave. I was frustrated. We had done all of that work and preparation only to remain in good old Wayne, Pennsylvania for one more day. But the next morning, determined and hopeful, we repacked the car. Well, I repacked the car. And we finally got on the road around 5:15 in the morning. And as we drove on a mostly empty highway, I was finally able to take a breath and reflect. I looked into the back seat, and I saw my son, my wife, our 2 dogs, and I was overwhelmed with a moment of clarity. I turned to Marissa and I said, "Isn't this it? Isn't this the whole point? We've been praying to God for a family like the one we have right now, and here we are, headed to one of our favorite places to be together." I realized that I had let the stress of preparation distract me from what was already right in front of me, the presence of God in the people that I love. That moment was a gift. The preparation, of course, had its place, but it wasn't everything. Our gospel passage today is a familiar one that speaks to the heart of Christian discipleship. It challenges us to consider how we should live as followers of Jesus in a complex and busy world. We are invited into Martha's home, where she receives Jesus as her guest. The story centers on Martha and her interaction with Jesus, while her sister Mary is described but never speaks. The scene is a radical one for its time because Jesus breaks through the social barriers by entering the home of 2 women and allowing Mary to sit at his feet, which would have been a position traditionally reserved for male disciples learning from a rabbi. In John's gospel, Mary and Martha are introduced as the sisters of Lazarus, but here in Luke, the home belongs clearly to the sisters, and Lazarus isn't mentioned at all. Mary takes her place among the disciples, listening to Jesus' teaching. Martha, meanwhile, is busy with the responsibilities of hospitality, something deeply valued in her culture. Frustrated, Martha voices her complaint to Jesus, essentially asking, "Lord, don't you care that I'm doing all the work here and Mary just sits there?" But Jesus gently responds by naming her distraction and her worry and affirming Mary's choice to be still and listen. This isn't a rebuke of Martha's work, but an invitation to consider where our attention lies. Often this story is to be interpreted as a contrast between two models of Christian life: Martha as the active servant, and Mary as the contemplative disciple. But I think there's more depth here. This passage immediately follows last week's story of the Good Samaritan, where Jesus calls us to go and do likewise. Now he tells us to sit and listen. The gospel writer isn't asking us to choose between action and contemplation, but to understand that discipleship includes both. The Good Samaritan and Mary display equally faithful responses to the presence of God, both being better parts in their own time and their own place. As I mentioned earlier, the packing of the car and the checking of the weather were all necessary for our trip to South Carolina. If we didn't do the work, we couldn't have gone. But recognizing the presence of God in my family was just as important. Sometimes our busyness, even for good and necessary things, can become a distraction. We can miss the grace of God that is right in front of us. August 1st will mark 3 years since my family and I joined St. David's. One of the things I've come to deeply appreciate is how active and engaged this congregation is. It's something I'm proud of. It's actually something that I brag about to other priests, so. We have members who serve faithfully in worship, formation, fellowship, pastoral care, and outreach. Our volunteers make this parish what it is. And yes, that work can feel overwhelming at times. But I also see those same people finding moments for stillness in worship and joining Bible studies, contemplative prayer groups, Stephen ministry, Monday morning flowers, retreats, you name it. St. David's is a place where both Mary and Martha are alive and well. And that is a true gift. I actually think the event that demonstrates this pretty well is our St. David's annual country fair. The fair is a lot of work. We have many faithful volunteers who make the fair possible, and they can be seen in the sheds across the street throughout the entire year. Our fair isn't just a one-day event, it's a year-long event. As soon as we close the gates on Fair Day, preparation begins for the next year. But the reason that you all work so hard is because the money that is raised from our fair goes to serve our outreach partners both locally and internationally. So the work being done isn't just for St. David's, it's to serve those in need. It's to reach those who have been forgotten and neglected. You are following Jesus' teaching to go and do likewise. You recognize the presence of God in the work that is being done. So in this moment, while I have this pulpit, I want to be a Mary and recognize the presence of God in all of you. The heart of this gospel story is not to shame Martha or elevate Mary as superior. Rather, it's a reminder that the Christian life is about rhythm, action and rest, service and prayer, work and worship. Jesus isn't diminishing Martha's efforts. He's reminding her and us not to lose sight of what matters most. The better part Mary chooses isn't the only good thing, but it is the necessary thing in that moment, to pause, to be present, and to receive the gift of God that was right in front of her. Mary serves as a good reminder for us Christians today that amidst our busy lives, it's important to stop and recognize God. So the question for us becomes, when are we Marthas and when are we Marys? When are we called to serve and act, and when are we called to stop, sit, and soak in the love of Christ? May we have the wisdom to know the difference and the courage to choose the better part again and again, so that we do not miss the sacred that is already here, right in front of us. Amen.